from the MMQB, Albert Breer. How are you, Albert?
I'm doing a little bit better. I mean, I think that, Mariah Carey took some of the heat off us almost right away, which was nice. And then, I had a day to process it. And, the week 17 and the coaching changes and all this different stuff has kind of kept me busy, which is a good thing in this sort of situation.
Yeah, well, the Big Ten, clearly, and by the way, just so you know, we booked this appearance before Ohio State got shut out and embarrassed on a national stage. And I'm sorry, should I not have said that, Brockman? I mean, is that what you're saying? I mean,
I think we just.
It's accurate. I think it's accurate.
Okay.
I can sit here and take it. I'm a big boy.
I did it before. I did it before Michigan. We booked this before Michigan found out that they were going to be without their two best players on a national stage and almost won anyway. So we knew all that. Brockman, is that incorrect also?
No, that happened.
Well, the good news is, Rich, is that I think the end result of this will be that you won't see the same offense next November that you got to see this November, where even that couldn't get you a win in the rivalry. So I think I'm expecting a little bit of an overhaul, and that'll be the good that comes from this on that side of the ball.
All right, let's talk pros now, Albert. Now that we've dispensed with our chit chat, that could be worse if we were off of if we were off the air. Yeah, exactly. Why did Jed York decide that Chip Kelly wasn't worth? Obviously, the win losses.
Yeah.
Right, but that Balky, a guy who he put his eggs in his basket to get rid of Harbaugh. 2 years later, now he's getting rid of everybody that Balky brought in.
Well, he basically got rid of everybody around Balky until Balky was the only one left. And I think his intention probably about a week ago was, all right, why don't we bring in a new general manager, and then we'll let the general manager make a decision on Chip, let the general manager make a decision on how the football operation is going to be set up. And they took a comprehensive look at absolutely everything. And I think the conclusion that he came to was that it would be debilitating to the process if he hung on to Chip Kelly, that some of the prime candidates and, general manager candidates are much more patient with these things because you generally don't get a second shot at being a GM the way a lot of coaches get a second shot at being a head coach. I think his feeling was we're better off just wiping the slate clean now. And so what we can sell to someone coming in, and I think it's an attractive job in this way, is what Jacksonville had to sell in 2013, which is this is basically an expansion team. There aren't debilitating contracts here. You can come in and you can do whatever you want at the quarterback position, and you're going to help us pick a coach. And so, I think that's a big part of it, is that now you can sell this to a general manager candidate as it's your show. There's nothing holding you back. There's nothing sitting here that you're going to have to deal with. You go in and you put together and you paint this picture however you want to paint it. And so I think that makes it a fairly attractive job if you're someone who's looking at, looking at the Jacksonville job, where a coach is going to have to come in, work with the sitting general manager, work with Blake Bortles, or the LA job where they still haven't made a decision on Les Snead yet, and you've got Jared Goff, who they gave up the moon and the stars for. So, I think that makes it, the fact that it's just this blank slate, I think gives them something to sell to general manager candidates.
But you'd have to say that Denver's the most attractive job that's available right now. Wouldn't you have to agree on that?
I would, but I would, Rich. But like in a lot of these situations, it's like L.A. with Goff. It's like Jacksonville with Bortles. What do you think of Paxton Lynch? What do you think of Trevor Siemian? And that defense, do you feel like you can build the offense up fast enough while that defense is still young enough to win? And so I think the structure of the organization is great. The ownership's been, and despite the health of Pat Bowlen, the ownership's been fantastic there for a long, long time. John Elway's proven himself as a team builder. I think the question is, can you work in that environment? Because that's not a clean slate environment. But if you feel comfortable with all of that, it is absolutely the best job out there in the market, because you're going to be able to go in and win right away.
Albert Breer joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. Why is there smoke and maybe a fire in New Orleans with Sean Payton after he re-signed there last year? Why is Payton to the Rams a hot rumor, Albert?
Well, I'll tell you this. I think last year, this goes back to last year, where I don't think, as much as it was painted to be Sean's found his place of retirement now. Like, this is going to be the place that he is for the next 5 years. I think the money became a factor, in the quick turnaround of everything that happened between the Colts and the Saints. And I think Sean Payton was of a mind to go to Indianapolis. But the Colts weren't willing to go to the financial level, close to the financial level that the Saints were willing to go to, and giving him a 5-year, $45 million deal to stay there. And so, I think that has lingered. His motivation for staying in New Orleans has lingered. And, I think that the fact that, like there's, California sitting out there for him, his daughter lives in L.A., and there's a chance to kind of recharge. I think all of that is attractive to him. And I think the Saints are probably a little tired at this point of having to go through this again, and so the Saints look at it and say, we've rebuilt the roster to a certain degree. We're younger than we have been in a few years. Maybe this is the time for us to reset too, and so I think there's a little bit of a mutual thing there that goes back to the fatigue, I think, that the two sides have been through over the course of the last couple of years as everybody speculated about his job status.
So give me the surprise, the one that hasn't happened yet. Or do you think we've seen it all now with Mike McCoy being fired in San Diego? Is there one out there?
Denver was a surprise. I mean, the other one that I would give you that I'm not completely sold is over yet would be Arizona. And I think part of that really kind of like comes down to what Larry Fitzgerald and Carson Palmer are going to do. If Larry Fitzgerald decides he's not coming back, if Carson Palmer were to decide he's not going to play in 2017, then I think Bruce Arians would have, some serious questions to answer about his own future and whether or not he wants to go forward with it. So that would be one. I think Chicago is still one of those that's up in the air based on how sideways the organization's been over the last couple of years. And we'll find out about Indianapolis here, in the next couple hours. And, that's obviously an interesting one because Andrew Luck's there. And so I think the Denver one's really the big shocker. But those three are three that I'm going to be keeping an eye on personally over the next couple of days.
And, we're going to hear the same names for interviews. We're already hearing about McDaniels and we're hearing about Kyle Shanahan. And these are the guys who are going to be, interviewing in their bye weeks. Give me the name of a coach that's out there, maybe who's been in it before or in college that you think can be enticed or might have the interest of an owner in the NFL, Albert.
I'll give you an interesting one because everybody's talked about David Shaw, right? And you're going to have to hear about bad news, Rich. You're going to have to hear about Jim Harbaugh every year for the foreseeable.
No, I know, and the hot rumor is that the Bears is the one job that might make them even pause for a quick minute, even though obviously there's unfinished business in Ann Arbor. And I'm just wondering. And David Shaw, how I feel, Albert.
I'll give you another Big Ten coach. How about that?
Okay.
And it's not Urban Meyer, although I think that would. I can see eventually him going to the NFL. One that will be kind of under the radar that I know a couple teams have done research on in the past that have openings now would be Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern. And I know that's an off-the-radar name, and there's a lot of the stuff that exists with David Shaw at Stanford exists with Pat Fitzgerald. He's in his hometown. He's coaching at his alma mater. He's well taken care of. He's got a ton of job security, all of that. But I know that the NFL people that have been through there and see what he's done there have been very, very impressed. And one of the things that really sticks out about it, and this is the same thing that kind of appealed people to Jim Harbaugh when he was appealed to people about Jim Harbaugh when he was at Stanford. Pat Fitzgerald has done more with less. And that's something that's really appealing to NFL people. Rather than winning in an Alabama or an Ohio State or a Michigan or a USC or one of those schools, a lot of NFL people will say, give me the guy, and this was Schiano, this went for Schiano when he was at Rutgers too. A lot of NFL people will say, give me the guy who's gone into a place that's a very difficult place to win and made it work. And that's what Pat Fitzgerald is. So I certainly could see his name coming up. If the Bears were to come open, I think that's the one that everybody would say that might be the one he'd jump for. But I think there are going to be teams out there right now that are going to be making calls and doing some more research on them.
Hey, I'll tell you what, Albert, and you and I have this discussion offline. We might as well have it here real briefly before we bid adieu. Obviously Bob Kraft is fingering a lot of pots. He's got a lot of businesses and he's got a lot of interest and a lot of friends. He showed up in an Ohio State zip-up a couple of years ago And I wouldn't be surprised if that Urban's the guy he's looking at if and when Bill decides to hang him up to go ahead.
Yeah.
If McDaniels is not still on the roster, on his coaching staff to replace him.
Yeah, and I think the one thing with Urban that a lot of people make the mistake, people make this mistake with Urban. They look at the offense and they say, oh, well, this is like Chip Kelly. That's not what Urban is. Like what Urban is a program builder. And in the same way Jim Harbaugh is that. He's a guy who can come in and he's adaptable he's adaptable as far as systems go. We've seen that with the different defensive coordinators he's worked with at Ohio State. And I think we'll see that with some of the changes they're going to make on the offensive staff this year. But what he is he's a program builder. He's a guy who can come in and shake your program up and set the culture a certain way. Now, the question would be whether or not pro athletes will respond to it the way college athletes have. But I could certainly see someone like Kraft trying to think outside the box and saying that's the type of guy I would want coming out of having had Bill Belichick for over a decade.
Albert, Happy New Year. Enjoy your family when you can, your burgeoning family when you can. It's a busy time of year, I'm sure.
Oh, thanks, Rich. To you too, all right?
You got it. That's Albert Breer of the MMQB, at Albert Breer on Twitter.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.